What's up, guys, and welcome to the very first episode of Kaiju Commentary. Today we're going to be watching the 1954 classic Gojira. When you see the Toho logo appear on your screen, that's your cue to start listening to us. So we're going to kick it off in 3, 2, 1. Alright, everybody, here we are for the 1954 Ishiro Honda classic Gojira, aka Godzilla. This is the one that started it all. All. There it is, the original logo. Well, still his logo, but the first time it was ever seen. And that roar was recently heard in Shin Gojira. They used a lot of his classic roars over the years, and this one made a return. I always love how they did this original title crawl, like kind of just his voice initially, kind of like hit the character's voice. It feels like, and then the music. The classic theme by Mr. Akira Ifukube, and this theme has been reused quite a bit in the franchise, and it's kind of become,
it's iconic.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of like, it's always funny too because this film is so kind of dour, and like it is depressing. But this theme is kind of peppy.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, but it has a bit of a pep. It's like da 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 da. Like
I don't think that's what they were going for.
No, we're all marching gingerly as we're all gonna die, basically. But I know. Yeah, growing up, this film.
That bassy roar.
Yep. And it's so, I love how it's so lo-fi. It almost sounds like it's blowing out the speaker.
Yeah,
it's like an old school black metal record. Like the production just sounds really bad, but it almost makes it great because it's so just raw and like fierce. And obviously they polish up his roar over the years.
It's been a while since I've seen this one. The original.
Now this whole sequence here, like it's supposed to be kind of a callback to I believe it was a fishing vessel that was in the South Pacific that got too close to one of the H-bomb tests.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, and this is kind of supposed to represent like them being exposed to Godzilla, essentially.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, like everyone, with the exception of one person, died. And this individual later died of radiation poisoning, basically overexposure. So he got away, only to be reclaimed, basically by the bomb later on. And this scene here is there's a lone survivor who gets away. And we'll get to that point in the movie, but needless to say, his escape is kind of just delaying the inevitable. But that whole sequence is supposed to be kind of a metaphor, or kind of representative of that event, which at the time in Japanese press is a very big deal, because this whole film is very, very political. It's Godzilla in this film is basically a giant metaphor for the atomic bomb. And here we have our lead, Akira Takarada, who is he's popped up in several of the Godzilla films over the years, but this is the one that kind of made him a star. This is his first big role. And this is Momoko Kochi, who plays Emiko, his love interest in the film. These are two up-and-coming stars.
Look at that motorcycle. So cool.
Yep. And it's funny, too, Takarada tells a funny story how, I guess, like his first day on set, he arrived, I guess, to the gate, the Toho lot, and the guard asked him, well, who are you? And he goes, Akira Takarada, I'm the star of Godzilla. And I guess the guard told him, no, Godzilla is the star of Godzilla. So he got checked real quick early on.
Humbled.
So yeah, hey, but get it out of your system early. it's kind of interesting when you watch like this original film, how it if this is kind of before the world knows about Godzilla. So it's interesting where now, and you watch the later films and this kind of stuff happens. Oh, it's Godzilla. It must be Godzilla. It's interesting now. And we haven't seen that again since till Shin, where again Shin was a complete reboot, where Godzilla had never been introduced before. So I was watching this film and seeing like what could this be, it's funny because you watch so many of the films that come after where there's now a precedence for Godzilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically for the first, I'd say, good third of this movie, it's kind of a whodunit movie because again, the logical conclusion is not that it's a giant, monster naturally. So, kind of the reactions people are having in this film are very realistic, in that sense.
Yeah.
Because you haven't introduced the concept of a kaiju yet in the real world, and this is post-war Japan, so
That's the thing. I mean, do you know anything about the original marketing for the movie? Did they must have marketed that, Godzilla was in it, right? Or was it supposed to be kind
of... no, they knew Godzilla was in it. I mean, again, it was very public what, one of the big inspirations for this film, too, was when they re-released King Kong, because back then there was no home media, no, like, home release. So, yeah, I know. So, basically, unless you had been around to see the original release of King Kong, you knew about it, but a lot of people hadn't seen it. So when it got re-released, it inspired like a whole new generation of filmmaking, and one of them being the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which, admittedly, so influenced this film being a big prehistoric animal, and a lot of people have said that that's kind of like a proto kaiju movie, and I would be inclined to agree with that. It definitely has elements of kaiju films, but it's not quite there yet. This film, I would say, is the first one in that genre because it kind of solidifies the status quo of what a kaiju film is. But one of the reasons, the choices to make Godzilla a dinosaurian creature was in part because of the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, because prior to that they were experimenting or playing around with different ideas of what to make him, and at one point they kind of wanted to make him look like something that looked like a mushroom cloud. So he had like a weird lumpy head and all that. So they really kind of wanted to take the atomic bomb metaphor and make it kind of a literal representation, and obviously it's kind of a hard thing to I guess translate. So they went with like basically a big dinosaur, but whose ability and and level of destruction matched that of an atomic bomb. So he had the aesthetic of a dinosaur, but the destructive force of like a nuclear weapon. And here we have I believe this is Odo Island, and in this film it kind of explains to you the mythology of Gojira, where that story came from, where the name comes from. It's interesting that in this film it explains to you that Godzilla was a myth. He was a legend, before he became this thing. And I know some people even make comparisons to saying how, like Kong, here we have an island. People, and again, these people are clearly not as primitive or as throwback as the kind of native people that are kind of shown in all the various incarnations of Skull Island. But it's it's the little elements that because again, prior to that, the only real movie besides the Beast in 20,000 Fathoms where you had a kind of a big creature in a city was King Kong. So. It's not surprising you see, little notes or elements of that film kind of sprinkled about in this film.
Yeah,
but not but not nearly to the degree where it'd be like a ripoff, where it's like just a little wink, like, hey, they had an island, we've got an island. But that's basically. And here we have the lone survivor, fisherman. Gee, shake that guy a little bit more.
I know.
When I was out there smacking him,
He's
like,
only in a shipwreck, fine.
I get they're trying to wake him up, but they're like beating the hell out of him. Like, oh, damn, people. There we go. I think it's the first time his name is said. So I think that right there, that moment was the first time the name, Gojira or Godzilla was ever said aloud on screen.
Mm.
But it's interesting here again. This is a part of his mythology that I don't think a lot of people either are familiar with or maybe just forget that within the the universe of Godzilla, he existed as a legend before. There was a precedent, and it's not quite clear as, okay, was that precedence based on seeing Godzilla in the past?
Yeah.
Or just that, there was a legend of this creature that they called...
he kind of became the legend.
Yeah, like he kind of fit the description. This big beast of some kind that came up from the sea. And here's this creature just, coincidentally happens to be the same kind of thing, so we just call him that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if a giant reptilian creature in real life emerged out of the ocean, even if it didn't really look like Godzilla, the media, would probably call it Godzilla. He would become Godzilla just because he just...
Hey, if the name fits.
Yeah, exactly. So it was always unclear to me, and I don't think they ever really explored it, but it'd be interesting, is like, okay, does the name Godzilla come from that, ancient people experiencing this creature? Or, again, he just happens to fit the bill. Because if you look at the legendary film, Godzilla is an ancient creature. So it implies that people have been seeing him for throughout human history. So in that case, he would very much be, like people had seen him throughout the ages. Or, so it's just interesting, like kind of the two different ways you can take it. And again, and it's never really explained, at least during the Showa era. I know in the later eras they kind of play around with his backstory a little bit.
Mm.
But I know in this era it's not really explicitly said, is he an ancient creature that people have been encountering? Or again, is he just, hey. It's like, hey, you know who you remind me of? We'll just call you that. You look like him.
Why not?
Why not? Living in Okinawa when I was a kid, this, Japanese island, basically, and I remember we would get, like, the typhoons there. So, seeing stuff like this is kind of nostalgic in a weird way. Like, all the wind blowing on these, tiny Japanese islands. So, it's kind of like, oh, I remember those nights.
You lived it.
Yeah, when those storms would come through. They didn't bring Godzilla with them, unfortunately, but... Or I guess fortunately.
I was going to say, unfortunately.
Ask these people. They're only too thrilled. So now it's like, okay, is that the storm? Or is that something else? Oh, and you hear the famous footfalls. And this obviously is the gentleman who survived the shipwreck. Oh, I think it's more than lightning.
Clearly we'll be safe.
Yeah, let me hide behind my wife. That'll do it.
Oh, no.
And this is essentially the gentleman in real life who, unfortunately, came. And you can see a little bit, if you look in the corner, upper left corner, you can see a little bit of Godzilla's leg. Because a lot of people say you don't actually see Godzilla. I missed it. It's very quick, and you don't really know what you're looking at unless you're looking at it. But a lot of people say you don't actually see Godzilla during the sequence. Mm-hmm. If you look closely... And it might have been a situation, too, where it wasn't even meant to be in the frame. Yeah. But because I always said if you look close, you can see it. And I was always looking at the screen all over. And now that you see this beautiful...
I'm sure you've seen this movie like a million times.
Yeah. We were watching the Criterion Collection release. So this is the... Right now...
Remastered?
Yeah, the highest remaster. I know there's Toho's talking about doing like 4K remasters. So there will be probably better ones soon. But right now, this is the clearest picture quality you're going to see for this film. So it might be one of those things where it might be too grainy before I really noticed it. But now that it's really crisp and clear, I noticed it.
Well, and again, you can only remaster things so much. It's only going to improve it a little.
Especially with these older films.
Yeah,
there's only so much you can do. It's really old film stock. But yeah, that's basically his metaphor. That even though he survived the shipwreck, ultimately he was doomed to die as a result of Godzilla. You know, it's like you can't
Can't
escape
escape it.
Godzilla, you can't escape the radiation, you can't escape
Death.
the devastation of the bomb, and that is what Godzilla is. He is the bomb.
Yeah.
You know, it's always interesting this sequence too because I don't think a lot of people realize the kind of the significance of it, and that is, you know, you're basically seeing the Japanese government having been revamped because prior to that they were, you know, prior to the war they were still an empire, and now they're a democracy, obviously here in the early stages, yes, but now a new form of government. So you're seeing people kind of in this meeting that normally wouldn't have been, different political groups, different people who represent different factions of society, now that before would have been completely, you know, would have had a say. So it's kind of, again, showing you at the time what was modern Japan.
As it is too. It's still weird seeing a movie this old and seeing them, you know, dressed in suits, the microphone,
Yeah.
all the, even the helicopter. You
Oh
know,
yeah. And here we have Takashi Shimura playing Dr. Yamane, the paleontologist. And in a lot of ways, I would say the voice of reason in this film. And quite honestly, the only one who, at least initially, but quite maybe honestly, in the whole film, the only person who really seems to want to understand what Godzilla is. I think, like in most films, everyone's first instinct is, we got, how do we kill it? How do we kill it? How do we kill it? And he's actually trying to figure out what he is, because he kind of sees God, even though Godzilla represents something very terrible, what he is such an incredible thing.
Well, again, it's a lot like Shin Gojira.
Yeah.
You know, they really did something similar in that.
We have Dr. Serizawa, played by Akihiko Hirata, Daisuke Serizawa, who, for those of you who have watched the 2014 film, the character Dr. Serizawa in that film is named after him. So,
Isn't that Daisuke?
Yeah, Daisuke Serizawa was his full name. He wasn't Daisuke Serizawa in 2014. I forget his first name, but the character's last name was Serizawa. Even though, ironically enough, he reminded me a little bit more of Yamane in that film, because he was very much, I don't want to say infatuated, but he was enamored with Godzilla. He didn't see just the monster. He saw, you know, this miraculous form of kind of biology, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Granted, Godzilla in that film represents something far less malicious than he does in this movie, so maybe you can understand it better. But still, it's interesting that, you know, you have a scientist in these films who, you know, realize that, you know, something like Godzilla shouldn't be, and yet here he is. That's incredible, you know what I mean? It just, you can see the footprint in the background, and that was done with use of matte paintings and how they basically layer them into, like, the film itself. And I forget how the process works exactly, but that's how they did all the shots where you would see, like, you know, again, like a footprint, something in the frame with like another actor.
Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't dig a big, you know, hole in the ground. So it was very interesting back then how they would use it was almost kind of like how we would use CGI now, where we would like take the frame of footage with, you know, something real in it and then add something that's not there in post-production. So,
it's funny, he's got his little radiation suit on. I'm like, what about everyone else in the immediate area?
I was wondering about that. I'm like, and your face is exposed.
Yeah.
So really, you're just kind of in a plastic bag.
A raincoat.
I mean, I don't know, maybe you think it's stylish. Good for you. But it's interesting here that they're picking up radiation. Again, like they're detecting Godzilla by these radiation, these trace elements, implying that he is irradiated himself.
Mm-hmm.
What you talking about, Willis?
Look at that old camera.
Yep. Again, this film really is a great snapshot in time, like, you know, showing you like an era. And this film, especially for the Japanese film industry, pioneered a great many techniques, not just for, kaiju films. I mean, obviously that was a big one, but for like just how they shot film. At the same time, they were actually shooting Seven Samurai. And on the set of that film, they kept hearing about, Gojira. And that was the big talk, ironically enough, on the Seven Samurai set, was this other film that Toho was producing, that Gojira was like, wanted to know about it, or trying to figure it out. So it was kind of like a trilobite. Implying, too, here that Godzilla is a prehistoric creature. Again, and it's never quite expressed how old Godzilla... again, I think the legendary film built heavily off this mythos and made a lot of things more literal. Here, it's implied Godzilla's ancient. We don't know if he's ancient or it's just a species. We don't know if he's been around through history or he's just a new... whereas I think in the legendary film, they built off all that and said, okay, yes, he's an ancient creature. Yeah. Yes, the name comes from the fact that because people have been seeing him, they made it kind of just... took what was left kind of mysterious in this film. And I think they really just made it literal in that film. So, but it's interesting that kind of Godzilla has a degree of mystique in this film. Now we're about to get our first look at the big guy, which coincidentally will not be the suit. It's the hand puppet they had.
Yeah.
So for a lot of scenes where Godzilla had a lot of dexterity in the head and the face, they had like basically a really evil-looking Muppet, basically.
It's kind of ironic that their first real view of him is in the middle of the day.
Well, because back then, you really couldn't shoot at night.
Oh, I know,
they would do something to do... Oh, here we go.
Hey, guys. Hey.
Look at that handsome devil. They actually shot it, didn't use it. Originally, love it. Sorry. Had the fanboy out for a split second. But they actually shot him initially. He came over that mountain or that hill, and he had a dead cow in his mouth.
That would have been kind of awesome.
Well, it implied that he was, feeding.
Yeah.
And they decided to cut it and shoot just a version of him coming over the mountain without it because they thought it'd be too gruesome. But they did shoot it, so you can see actually production stills of that shot of him there with his dead cow in his mouth. But
hey guys, just grabbing a bite to eat.
Yeah, basically. But it's kind of interesting too because it's been later implied that, and actually not even just implied in certain films, especially in '84, showing that Godzilla feeds off atomic or nuclear energy. That's what he eats. That's what he lives off. And legendaries even said that they're nuclear creatures that they feed off nuclear energy. So if they had shown him eating like an animal.
Yeah, why would he be doing
it? It would imply that he predates on other, that he eats meat like anything else. So that would have completely changed what we would have seen later on in films.
Yeah.
So by omitting that shot or not using it, see, scenes like that's a real shot of the beach, and then they laid in the shots of the footprints. I like
where they show where the
tail drag, yeah. Okay. The paleontologist in me has to take some issues. 2 million years ago, nah. And this is something that other people have pointed out too.
Bad anatomy.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I guess for the time.
Hey, I remember having books like that as a kid. Where that was how the dinosaurs looked.
Yikes.
Yeah. But seeing how the T-Rex they just showed. Look at Godzilla's design.
Yeah.
Back then, 1954, Godzilla would not have looked that dissimilar, maybe aside from his size, from what they would have thought a theropod dinosaur would look like. Yeah. He had the body structure, the way he held himself. Now you look at like a T-Rex or any other kind of theropod and looks nothing like Godzilla.
Look at that handsome guy.
I know. So Godzilla is interesting enough become kind of his own creature over the years. He started off as just kind of like a souped up dinosaur, but now I think he's going to become more than that because again, he doesn't look like a dinosaur.
It's funny that they used like a painting of him. He's like, get my good side.
165 feet tall. Isn't that quaint?
Now.
He's like over 300 feet. Shin was like, I don't even know how tall. Is the tallest god. Shin in Legendary are just gargantuan now. Over twice the size of this Godzilla. Who are, for those of you who are not American, that would be 50 meters. And again, I always like these sequences here because it kind of shows you like You have, which honestly, what's really changed? You have kind of men of science and logic trying to appeal to reason, and how they get bogged down and mired in just politics of people who are kind of out for their own interest. And you'll see here how quickly the scene kind of dissolves in just political squabble. And
well, it's funny because they're talking about how the H bombs destroyed its home. Drove it out of its natural territory. It's just, again, that still happened today. I mean, obviously this is fake, but
yeah, well, it's,
development and everything.
Well, yeah, human advancement encroaching on a lot of natural habitat. It's just the animal. The difference is usually when we encroach on another animal's habitat, the animal can't really encroach.
There's no lashback.
Yeah, I mean, the animals, you might see, like, okay, you might get a grizzly bear rooting around in your garbage, but at the end of the day, you get a guy with a shotgun, you can kill the grizzly bear. What happens here, though, is when, nature encroaches back and we can't stop it. Like, we've unleashed a creature that is more powerful than us, and we can't do anything about it now. Is that a white guy in the background? Or a Japanese? So. Okay, sorry, that sounds really racist. He's just from that angle. I was like, I never noticed that. Now, 2 years later, this film was released in the United States in 1956 under Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and they edited out chunks of the film, and they inserted American actor Raymond Burr, who later would play like Perry Mason. And he would kind of cut him in the film so it looked like somebody who's interacting with these characters and this and that to kind of Americanize it. And a lot of the, nuclear allegory was removed because, well, Americans are the ones
America can't be to blame.
Well, yeah, because America is obviously America is the one who dropped the two bombs on Japan. The H-bomb testing was done by the Americans, so kind of painted America a little bit in negative light. Not on purpose, but they were just being reflective of the situation at the time.
History?
Yeah. This film did get a young cut version. The Japanese version did get a small release in the U.S. prior to the 1956. So this version did get released very briefly, but made no waves. It was until the... and here you kind of see, like I was saying, kind of the situation just quickly degenerating into politics and, people...
You go, girl.
Yeah, which, again, post-war Japan, you can have women speaking out. This is it shows you the change in government, the change in just the life of people in this country. So this film is a good history lesson. This may not have had giant atomic dinosaurs walking around back in 1954 Japan, but it does show a lot of the changes in politics. And some things don't ever change. Politics, even today, I think it's just this. When a scientist tries to make a decent point, and like, hey, something really bad's happening, and then everyone gets right here. Saddest shot in the whole damn movie because it's so meta of life in general. But yeah, the newsreel, this kind of thing this was a sequence that was cut out of the 1956 version. Talking about, she's even saying now, we mentioned the atomic bomb, and that was saying all sequences where people mention the atomic bomb, living through it, being exposed to it. See, right here, talking about escaping the bomb in Nagasaki, all that removed from the American version because it was considered too much of a political hot topic. And again, it was us doing it to them.
And just like, it's just kind of ironic they wanted to bring this movie over to America, because it's like this whole movie... it's about Godzilla, but it's more about what he represents, and America was just like, oh, cool, big monster, cool.
And that's exactly what the film was billed at. It was a giant...
Yeah.
But here's the thing. While, yes, in a perfect world, that I get it, but it was because of that film that it launched Godzilla abroad and got people really interested in the character, and so much so that we have the original uncut version of this film, but unfortunately it was a necessary evil. And they did the same thing with the 1984 film. They recut it and released it as Godzilla 1985, and Raymond Burr reprised his role in that film. And they originally wanted to basically edit it so bad that it basically turned into like a comedy, And he even said,
How-
I know.
How would you even manage
Yeah,
that?
exactly. Well, he read the script and he said,
Oh,
he's
man.
even said he understood what 56 was in history and why it needed to be doing it. But he says, if you guys, I refuse to be a part of this film if you do it. He goes, I want this film, 80, I know you have to make changes for the American audience, whatever, but I want to make these changes as minimal as possible to keep as much of the integrity of that film as possible. So he stuck up for it. So there's only a couple lines that are kind of, carry over from that script, but that's how these films were. You had to make changes. Now we live in a digital era where even if they don't want to change it, people will find ways to see the uncut version of these films. So it's kind of pointless now for studios to try to quote unquote Americanize them, which is why I think when Shin was brought over here, they didn't bother even doing a dub. They just straight subbed it and released it because it's like.
Again, most people nowadays prefer it that anyway.
I agree, and I think Western audiences are more sophisticated now and are far more open to film and cinema from abroad than as opposed to once upon a time. I mean, I've never had a problem with it, but I know your average film goer might be like, I don't want to read what I'm watching. Yeah, even though I'm like, honestly, even the old days when I wasn't quite used to it, I thought it was kind of strange. It would bother me for maybe, not even bother me, for like a couple minutes because I had to get used to it, and before I knew it, I'm reading it, and it's like not an issue. I think it's just the idea of having to read subtitles that kind of bothers people, but in reality, it's like it's not a big deal. And here we have also Doctor. You see, that's Stegosaur. Even as a kid, I was like, that's rough, man. Not the most. It's the 50s. It's fine. And I like how you see him here, Dr. Yamane. He's sulking, yes, but he's. I think he's kind of just grieving what he probably feels is like the death of like intelligent thought. We're supposed to be entering a shiny new era for our country, and we're not acknowledging this. We're just humanity is just doing what it's always done, just kill. But at the same time, I mean,
even back then, Japan was lit up at night.
Yeah, Tokyo, man, city of lights.
I know.
If you've ever been to Tokyo, you know exactly what we mean. Greatest city in the world. I stand by that statement forevermore. I love Japan in general.
Those two girls dancing with each other.
Oh, snap. I never noticed that.
Progressive.
Wow. I never noticed that. Holy crap. I'm sure it was just like we're
friends, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't. Wow. Okay. I'll tell myself it means something more progressive. Oh.
Am I invited to the party?
He pulls up 2 bottles in his hands.
See, my question is this. If they knew ships were disappearing, why would you go on a cruise?
I mean,
unless it's far away from the
I think that's what it was. It was further out. And again,
Okay.
I think his shows like his kind of progression towards the main. Yeah. Which is obviously done by wires. And despite all the remasters they've done on this film, they've actually never removed any of the wires. And it was asked, would you guys ever digitally remove it? And they said no, because it's representative of how we did special effects back then. Because in addition to being a narrative, it's also a snapshot into movie making in a particular era. So when people say, don't you want to go back and modernize, you can... Because if they wanted to, they can clearly just do a CGI Godzilla in this film and just use a digital filter to make him look grainy and old. I'm like, yeah, sure, you could, but that's not the point.
Nobody wants to pull Lucas.
Yeah. They don't want to do a special edition of this movie. No disrespect to Star Wars or anything, but we all love Star Wars here. Okay, so that's fine. Don't hate us. Rogue One is the shit, but again, it's about showing films because filmmaking itself is an art form. So I feel like changing. I mean, it's one thing if you want to remaster the footage, clean it up, boost up the sound. Okay, you're not changing what's been there. You're just kind of enhancing it. But to replace one special effect with another or hide a special effect or how they create a special effect with a newer one, you're kind of erasing, how the film was made when it came out.
Yeah. It's like taking the fingerprints off it.
Yeah, again, yes, sure, it looks more realistic to not see the wires, but it's
Well, again, you're still watching a movie that was made
in 1954.
Yeah.
And it should look like it was made in 1954 because guess what? It was made in 1954.
Isn't that what you said? Cameron said or something about his movies.
Real quick, the actor right there who's just handed him the piece of paper. Yeah. That's Godzilla.
Is it really?
That's the suit.
In the suit?
Yep.
Nice.
They go on to they give him like, and it's not the first time too. Like sometimes the suit actors make little cameos in the films, you know. So they, but yeah, I know. Pretty sure like James Cameron, and I'm pretty sure he was talking about the original Terminator because I think he made a point of saying, yeah. They asked him if he would ever go back and do that with any of his films, and he said something to the effect like, "Oh, you know, I made a film in the '80s. It looks like it was made in the '80s because it was like made in the '80s." I'm paraphrasing him, but I think he might have said '84, which if he did, he was talking about Terminator.
Yeah.
But it's the idea of saying, you know, these films are what they were. They are. And besides, they're still making Godzilla movies. So if you want to see Godzilla with modern day special effects, just go to the movies. You'll see them. Something that's interesting too, how they show like a male and female like love interest in these films. You know, especially in Japanese cinema. You know how they show, because in Western films, it's even back then it was not uncommon to see the guy just plant a big wet one right in the girl's mouth. But in Japanese society, people are much more reserved, much more polite, and public displays of affection are considered kind of frowned upon. You're not going to see two people just making out. So physical.
Well, there was the one time when you were in Tokyo at night.
Oh yeah, we saw the high school kids hiding in the shadows, making out with their girlfriends. 3 separate
couples in this one tiny shady area.
Yeah, whereas in America, these kids would be like sucking face on a park bench or something. But are probably doing more than that, quite honestly.
Gross.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, you know, you'll notice that here you're not gonna have the classic like, you know, tips the girl over and like, you know, give me
super offer.
Yeah, you're not gonna like, you know, give me some sugar toots. You know, you're not gonna have that in this movie. And you know, any kind of physical contact, really, that's kind of in a romantic sense would have been considered like, whoa, you know. So you know, it's interesting too because you can learn a lot about watching films from other places. You learn a lot about different cultures, and you know, for me as a kid, watching a lot of these Japanese films, even though they were dubbed in English, I still kind of learned a little bit about just how, you know, the mannerisms, the way people carry themselves, you know, a little bit, because you can only re-edit these films so much, but you can't remove all of that. So I don't know, if you ever want to learn about other cultures, watch entertainment from other places, other countries, watch movies, watch television, you know, hell, watch some of their commercials. Japan's got the greatest commercials.
I know.
The best commercials. It's funny seeing a car there that size.
I know.
You look at the cars now. I mean, it's Dr. Serizawa.
He's so cool looking.
Oh. Now, he's developed something in this film, a weapon or something that will become weaponized, and he's very protective of it. Being very kind of secretive of it, you know, trying to play it off like it's not important, but because he doesn't want to, because he pretty much knows what he's developed, but he knows what it can be used for, and he knows that ultimately that's what it will be used for. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't want to kind of open up Pandora's box. Yeah. And this will kind of become the dichotomy of this character's struggle in this film, you know. Because ultimately, if you were to unleash this weapon, you know, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, okay? If you don't, Godzilla could destroy the world. If you do, well, you've effectively released something worse than possibly even him. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, what do? You know what I mean? And like most terrible weapons in history, they weren't even developed initially as a weapon. I mean, what became the atomic bomb was originally not meant to be used for that, but of course, you know.
American military.
Well, again, it's like anything else. I mean, you have scientists, I think, who dream up a lot of this stuff to better mankind, and then there's the people who see it. You know, it's
weaponized.
Like exactly, and I think that's kind of the fine line a lot of scientists have to work with. And this character really, really shows that. You know, like he's torn because he's invented something incredible, But if it can be used for killing, it will be used for killing, and he knows that.
Yeah.
And that's what he struggles with. It's like, his duty as a scientist and his duty as kind of to humanity. Do I safeguard humanity, or do I save humanity and potentially expose it to something even worse? So it really is it's really kind of a shitty situation to be in. And you really think about it that way, you realize this is one poor bastard right here.
I know. I'll bring you to my secret laboratory.
I loved it when scientists always had like laboratories. I loved it when laboratories looked like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's so like old timey film, but I love it. It's
classic.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, obviously now we could probably just be fully automated from like someone's MacBook or something now to get around this, but still, it's just more of the point. It looks cool. All the beakers and Bunsen burners and electrodes, and you got to have the library.
That cool TV.
It's a nice library. I want a library. Yeah, I've got enough hardcovers now to fill that, I'd say. This film also has some great moments of silence, which Japanese films, it's not uncommon. Using silence as kind of a dramatic element, because as the saying goes, silence is deafening. So and I like the way they first reveal what his invention does.
I like that he doesn't even really say it. He just does it.
And the way they're going to show this is very interesting. Like, they're not actually... You see a little bit in the corner, and then...
Yeah.
Cut away. They don't show it. Not yet. You'll see it later on. But your initial thing, it's setting it, building it, that it's so horrible that we can't even show it to you yet. Mm-hmm. We live in a world now where Godzilla exists. And we've seen Godzilla. So what could be so horrible that we can show you Godzilla, but we can't show you this? Like, I love how they set that up. Again, you will see it, but they're trying to show you that there's a reason why he doesn't want to tell people about this. It's that bad, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, and even she's all like, yeah, that shit was crazy, dude. Don't worry about that. Keep that door locked.
Make your own dinner tonight, guys.
Takarada almost looks like he's like, what now? It's like every time someone walks in a room now, some shit just got bad. I'm like, God damn it. Can I have just one night where shit just doesn't result in me just frowning and looking at the floor? Nope, I guess not. Gotta say, Takarada looks pretty swanky, though.
I know.
He's still he's kind of like a nice, he looks like a really sophisticated, like, elderly gentleman now. If you look at him, he's aged really, really well. He had a cameo in the legendary film that got cut out, and I was always bummed about that, because I remember when that film was in production, they released like a photo with him and Gareth Edwards, the director. Like, I was like, oh, sweet, Takarada's gonna have a cameo, and it got cut. And I think he played a Japanese customs agent. But I was always hoping that maybe they'll do like a deleted scene with him, but they never showed it. So maybe in the future we'll get an extended cut of that movie and get to see his performance, regardless of how brief. And the air horn, which they would have heard during the war, the air science. Again, a lot of the visual imagery, the sounds, again, you replace Godzilla with, bombers and fighter planes, and it's essentially what Japanese people would have seen during World War II. So when people are, sitting in a movie theater, watching this, they would have been alive during all that happening. Mm-hmm. So to see that playing out on screen, it would have been very, like, it would have been, it's hard for us as Americans to imagine because there's really no kind of comparison.
Yeah.
And here's the first instance where we learned the long tradition that the military don't do shit to Godzilla. And it's interesting here, you see how his head is kind of tilting to the side. Mm-hmm. It's actually because the suit was getting waterlogged and getting really heavy. Because believe it or not, there's actually the suit you see in this film is not the first one they built. They created another one. He actually looked more dinosaur into that one a little bit. He was a bit more hunched over. His proportions were a bit more of what you would see dinosaurs looking like in the textbooks. But it was so damn heavy, the actor couldn't move it. Yeah. And I think when it got wet, too, they said they just soaked up the water like a sponge and just was basically turned to it.
What did they initially make the first suit out of? Was it not latex?
No, they are. It was just the way it was constructed. So because the second suit was a lot leaner looking. Yeah. So basically what they did with the first suit, they cut off the whole top half and they used just the legs. So there's a scene where you see Godzilla's feet walking. And it's actually the actor kind of wearing them as like big suspenders. But even still, like, I mean... You know, those suits were hot as hell, too, and the actors were, like, pouring out sweat when they would open them up.
I can imagine back then. No ventilation systems.
Yeah. Here we go. This right here, there we go. Godzilla traipsing through a city, destroying shit. This is your kaiju movie. This is right here when it becomes a kaiju movie. You've seen him taking artillery fire, crushing civilization. Right here is the birth of the kaiju genre. That shot. There you go. It may not, for people who aren't really familiar with this, it may not seem like much, but, this shot here, these shots are historic in that. Like, this is when the genre became what it was. Mm-hmm. This is setting up the staple for what will ultimately be the genre forevermore. I mean, Godzilla still does this now in movies.
I know, right?
Granted, he's bigger and the stuff he's stepping on is bigger, but...
Oh, I forgot. His eyes, like, he doesn't have pupils in this one, right?
He does. It's just,
Is it just the way they're looking?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they were, like, painted wood. I think that's what they were. So depending on how the light hits it. I
know in some of them, or at least one of the movies.
In GMK, that, right? 2001. Let's see, right here is the puppet.
Yeah.
You can see. Godzilla, was it Mothra, King Ghidorah... Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters, All Out Attack. It's a really long title. People just call it GMK. But yeah, in that film, they gave him just the wide eyes. He didn't have any pupils. And then in Shin, he kind of had the Nick Cage crazy eyes, as we call it. And in 84, which is a direct sequel to this film, ignoring all the films that came after, he is when they weren't using the Cybot head for like the close-up, the actual suit, his eyes are always looking up. So he almost looked like he was just kind of detached and deranged. So his eyes have always kind of... maybe inadvertently had a weird look to them.
Man, fuck this bridge.
Fuck this bridge. But see, that's the interesting thing. But this seems so quaint now by comparison, which you see Godzilla just not grabbing a bridge. But back then, seeing destruction happen in their city, you would have not seen that since the war. Yeah. And so for them to see that happening to their city, this was, for some people, hard to watch, Again, to America, it was just a monster movie. But, when you saw the Beast from the Beast of 20,000 Fathoms traipsing through New York City, I mean, it didn't really... Because, New York was never attacked. New York was never bombed, at that time anyway.
Yeah.
So, it was a monster city. It didn't resonate with people. Whereas seeing this, it really resonated with the audience because...
A barbed wire barrier. That's so quaint.
Well...
I know.
So now it's like, now people want to listen.
Is that Tokyo Bay?
I believe so, yeah.
I was gonna say, because where exactly is this one supposed to be?
Yeah, he attacks Tokyo. I mean, the second film, he's in Osaka. This film, though, he's in Tokyo. Now, okay, I want to point something out. By the way, classic evacuation scene. Yeah. You always got to have an evacuation scene in a Godzilla movie where...
Those adorable school children.
Look at that. You see that one guy soldier's like smiling, helping a little girl up. One of the most efficient countries in the world, even to this day. Like when they need to move people or move anything, I feel like in America it'd be like rioting in the streets, whereas in Japan people are just they're very teamwork oriented. So everyone likes to work together to accomplish a goal. Whereas I think in Western society, I think in Western society, especially in America, we're very much
for themselves.
Everyone can be a hero. Everyone can be Rambo. It's like everyone's a special snowflake.
I wish America had more of a team effort.
Yeah.
Mindset.
Yeah.
I mean that sounds kind of lame.
Well, no,
like,
but
we do, but not to the extent they do.
Yeah, no, it's very much a very functional society. And these were, from what I understand, just kind of drills America and like a self-defense force were working on together. So they just kind of just got footage or filmed some of it themselves. Yeah, that was interesting. And also, they use some stock footage in these movies too, from like the war itself.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not the only one to point this out, and if you watch other commentaries to this film over the years, people point out like, okay, they were supposed to have erected these things in what, a couple days? Like they're building these big towers to kind of stop.
You can tell that one's laid in right there.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. So you can see kind of shaking, but again, how they used like a lot of these right here, they're all laid into the front shot, But
it looks good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for the time. I mean, again, if it's every once in a while you'll see them kind of shaking, but it's like, okay, all this is supposed to have been built up in like a few days. So I'm not the only one to point that out. So if you watch other commentaries to this film, other commentators have said that. But I feel it bears repeating even here because it's almost like, ironically enough, a giant 50-meter tall nuclear dinosaur, I'll buy that. But it's like those giant.
I know, right?
Japan's efficient. Don't get me wrong, but they're not
hey,
that.
Remember they fixed that one sinkhole overnight?
I guess, but I'm just kind of like,
and
damn.
It opened back up again, but they
But
fixed it again.
But see, I like how these films do it, where it's like, okay, they try the standard, let's shoot them up, blow them up approach. When that doesn't work, now we gotta get creative. Now we have to be clever. And then I like now a lot of Godzilla films do that. It's like, hey, when shooting Godzilla doesn't work, let's find something else to do. And it forces you to get creative. And I like these films because, again, Godzilla is not your atypical threat. You gotta get clever. You gotta think.
I've seen some shit.
Looking rough, bud.
I was gonna say, he just looks so defeated.
Well,
can't blame him.
Exactly. See, that's he's still seeing Godzilla as the kind of the wonder of nature that he is, despite his destructive qualities. Which you don't blame it. It's interesting because at the same time they don't kind of vilify the people who are trying to kill Godzilla because you really can see it from both sides. I mean, on the one hand, Godzilla is a wonder of nature. What he is, what he can do, is incredible. But at the same time, you can't ignore the threat he poses to, everyone, So you're kind of torn,
Yeah.
It'd be nice to kind of, you have to study and observe Godzilla, but, if you've got family, you got people you care about, and Godzilla's, coming to town, you want to protect them.
Guess you're not getting his consent.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you're basically seeing in these two characters kind of both sides of the same coin. It's like, and you really can't blame either one of them for the way they feel. They're both valid points, but at the same time, it's which one's going to take precedence. The scientific, the knowledge we could gain from studying Godzilla. Or, our need for self-preservation. Because it's kind of like, well,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tokyo, Yokohama coast. So that's the thing. How many years after the bombings again was this? Because Tokyo would have also been
completely rebuilt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Tokyo wasn't bombed, but the fire bombings.
Well, the fire bombing. That's what I meant.
I see. It probably would have been close. I think it was around 8 to 10 years. I mean, I'm not positive on that. I'd have to kind of fact check. But it was around that period of time. So I mean, again, I mean, people would have been alive. Adult people who are adults in this film, working and living their life.
Her father saying, we should be focusing on how it survived the bombings. Obviously for someone like him who lived through it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they would have too, but I'm assuming they would have been younger. They might not remember it as well. How old are they supposed to be?
They're like in their 20s, in like their early 20s, so they would have been like teens.
I guess, yeah.
But so they would have been old enough to remember, and I mean, they weren't like babies when it happened. And again, it was implied too that Godzilla's unique kind of skin texture, he kind of has that really rough, rigid, was implying that he was kind of burnt by the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And that's something that was kind of, I think, lost. It just never was explained. It was just kind of like, but if you...
They just thought it was his design.
Yeah, but if you look at the interviews and talking about what went into making this film, explain that's why he has that skin texture. So he's supposed to... It's implied that maybe he was a natural animal that had been kind of marred by the bomb.
Yeah, like a burn victim almost.
Yeah, so and his abilities, his powers, were kind of enhanced. But again, that's the thing. It was never really explained. Was that as a result of the bomb? Or did he have that before? Again, different films, but Legendary obviously kind of really basically said, okay, he was Godzilla before, and our use of nuclear energy awoke him.
Yeah.
Whereas this is saying, okay, not only did it lure him out too, but it maybe, enhanced him. So again, this film never really specifies which one it is. So there you go, the atomic breath, which back then was just like steam. Yeah.
It's funny because right there, I mean, obviously it's black and white, but almost looked like ice at first. But it's supposed to be heated up and melting.
So when people complain that maybe newer iterations of Godzilla, they don't have the classic blue, breath, which he's had for most of his career. His career.
His film career.
Yeah. But yeah, originally it was just like a white gas because that's all they could do.
Yeah. Like dry ice or steam or something.
Yeah, I think we'll find out when we watch it, but I think Mothra vs. Godzilla was the first time he had the animated blue atomic breath. I'm pretty sure. It was either that film or the one after.
Was this the only black and white one? I can't remember.
No, the Godzilla Raids Again, the film that comes afterwards, was black and white. So only the first two Godzilla films are in black and white.
See there, I think they animated it in.
They did. Well, they animated parts of it. I know his back.
That looks like an overlay there.
Yeah, that's an overlay. When his fins or his spines when they light up, that's animated. Oh, it's like a cell shaded kind of.
Yeah. Get out of the road.
It's interesting too how they did it because the way they did it, it's something that's laid over.
Yeah.
Whereas in newer films, it's like they're glowing from within. I know some people have complained, like Shin does it that way, Legendary does it that way. They're saying, well, it doesn't look like the classic light up. Well, yeah, but that's the thing. Realistically speaking, it would come, the glow would come from within. But back then, they had to lay the effect in over an existing physical prop. So there was really no way for them to make it look like it was coming.
Wow.
That face, yeah. Look at him. Got some crazy eyes. Which, interestingly enough, when they say Shin's design was based heavily off the original, it seems like they based it all off like the puppet look, not the actual suit. Because when you see those shots of him looking at you like that with the Nick Cage eyes, as I call them, that looks a lot like Shin. And then when you see the 54 suit, not so much. And I like how they overlay. There's a lot of good overlays back then. How they worked him in,
Yeah.
Now that'd basically be the equivalent of putting like a digital character in the same frame with like a real actor,
Yeah.
That's a kind of like a 50s version of how they would do a Rocket Raccoon, basically now, or a Groot.
I am Godzilla. I am Groot. Didn't you guys try this already?
There's the puppet. There's the suit. So it's funny too because these sound effects, the shots of the tank fire, they've reused a lot of these in Shin It's like an homage. So
I remember you saying that, and now that I hear it,
yeah,
I totally hear
which
what
I
you
always
mean.
said it works for this film because the whole soundtrack is in mono.
Yeah.
Whereas you watch Shin, I could always kind of tell whenever, even if I didn't recognize the sounds, I could always tell when they were like reused from older film because the sound didn't quite match because it wasn't digital. But yeah, so you hear if Shin was your first Godzilla film, you might recognize in some of the sounds you've heard in that film in this film. In fact, a lot of it is sound effects and musical cues are taken from this film.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when Godzilla's first rising out of the bay, that kind of big cello, viola kind of sound was what they used when he was transforming to like his third form or whatever in that film. He was like rising up kind of on two legs, just kind of like on this film, he was kind of rising up out of the ocean. So it's kind of interesting how they kind of did the parallels like that.
Again, I hadn't seen this one in quite a few years, so now after watching Shin Gojira, I really am seeing all the kind of callbacks.
Yeah.
I keep saying callbacks, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Kind of the nods to that film. Or the nods to this film that one made. Hey guys! Oh, that's a scary... Oh, look at the people in the window.
I was just going to say that, all the people.
Like a lot of these little touches that were really, And again, I like how there's always a lot of times people in the frame with Godzilla. I always love that shot. See, right here, Tokyo in flames. Anyone in that theater would have remembered that. That's the thing. It would have been kind of like basically about 10 years after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. You go and watch a movie, and a bunch of planes or something, or basically Pearl Harbor's, people are dropping bombs or blowing stuff up in Pearl Harbor. That's what it would have felt like. You'd like, wow, we saw this like 8-10 years ago. It's so weird to be seen. So the film struck something in people. It very much, it resonated. And this scene right here was removed from the, my favorite shot in the whole movie, this one right here. I've always loved this shot.
I think the perspective's a little off, but I like what they were doing.
It is, yeah, totally. But I'm not saying...
Why do I keep tripping on stuff? No. And I forgot they gave him those really straight, like, janky teeth.
Yeah, kind of daggers, basically. But again, that was more or less in the puppet, right? Yeah, this whole sequence right here is heartbreaking. Yeah, we're going to join Daddy. And it was kind of implied, too, that their father is a serviceman in the war. Meaning he was a Japanese soldier who died, and they're going. But the fact that you see, like, okay, there's a real human toll in this film. Like, here's a mother and her children. Children are going to die in this movie. All that was cut out of the American cut because again, they wanted to just turn into a big, fun monster movie. Whereas here, they're showing you, no, there's consequences. There's loss of life, and it's not always just the boys in uniform. You know what I mean? Who die? It's innocent people. And that's kind of why. War and all this kind of stuff. I mean, not to get like preachy about it, but it's trying to show you that in the end, it doesn't matter what side you're on. It sucks for everyone. In the end, no one really benefits from war. It's like it's like the song says, war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. But yeah, this shot right here. I mean, And, the Tokyo you see in this film is a rebuilt Tokyo. Very little of the original part of the city is still standing. I mean, parts of it. It's not completely gone, but most of Tokyo at this point was new. They had to rebuild it. So to see their new city, their essentially would now have been the city of the future for them.
I don't think this is probably like the exact same part of Tokyo.
No.
Would it have been that rebuilt?
I mean, I'm not quite, again, I'm not like... quite sure like on the specific time, but I know a good portion of the city was gone. So to see
look at his eye there, that definitely looks like Gojira.
To see the city like the rebuilt city, a little bit of stop motion right there. There you go.
I noticed that before, one of the cars when it flipped.
Obviously Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and even King Kong was stop motion. That was kind of the CGI at the time. But Toho kind of lacked the resources or the funds to do.
Didn't you say initially that's how they wanted to try and do him?
That is how they wanted to do him, but they did the math and basically said the cost.
Expensive.
It would have taken them years to make the movie.
Yeah.
Doing stop motion, so they went with CGI, but they were able to kind of use, or not CGI.
I knew what you meant.
Not CGI, Suitimation. Tokusatsu, as it's called. But yeah, they originally wanted to go that way, but but they pioneered really Suitimation as it's became to know, and they did great work with it. So if you look right here, you'll see closely, you'll see like one of the wires. It's hard to see because it's been there. It is.
See the shine.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying, "Will you remove stuff like that?" And they're like, "No," because granted, I think it's pretty much the only shot you actually see it anyway.
I know. Not that I've been actively like scouring, but I haven't noticed any other ones really.
And it's funny now. You see the Diet building that's their government building. The Godzilla now, both new Godzillas, Legendaries and Shin, are over twice as tall as that Godzilla is right there. So that Godzilla, his head would be like at their hips. Put in perspective of how much bigger. Someone did like an artistic rendering of Shin in that same shot.
Yeah.
And the Diet building is like on his like below like his hip, basically.
Tiny.
Again, just wave of destruction. There's a really good idea.
I know, right?
Hey guys, I have a fantastic idea. Let's shine lights in his eyes. You're supposed to think they're supposed to be right there. How scary that would be.
I'm here for my close-up. Yikes.
And the guy even said, sign out. Like he went down, to tell the story. They. And this was Raymond Burr's character, what he was basically doing in this film.
See,
he was
I never
reporting.
saw the Raymond Burr one. You never showed that one to me.
Yeah, well, no disrespect to that production or even Raymond Burr, because Raymond Burr actually did a really good job in that film. But that version of the film, I feel, and it's my opinion, and if you guys have a difference of opinion, that's quite all right. But I feel it's kind of superfluous now. It's kind of pointless now that this version is available.
Yeah.
However, you can view it almost as a different movie.
Yeah.
And I know some people have done that with that film. So if you want to look at it as a different film, you can. I kind of look at it as it served its function. It helped us get to a point in history where we could have this version of the film. Because it's not just they just add a Western actor in it. Whatever, that's fine. Again, he did a great job in the movie. It's more
they completely changed the script and everything, right?
Yeah, it's more what they removed. They removed a great deal of nuclear allegory. A lot of those shots of showing you really the toll of what happens when Godzilla, comes to town. So I feel it was more of a disservice ultimately to the, but again, it served its function at the time. But now that we have this version widely available, I think it's more or less that people are nostalgic for that version. It's kind of like, if people with like the 85 cut of 84 is now available in the West. I don't really feel the need to go back to watch the 85 version, even though that's the one I grew up with. It's all the things I loved about that movie are in the 84 version plus more. So I'm good to go. But, hey, both versions of both movies are available. So, hey, you got options. That's the great thing about living in the digital era. We have options.
Yeah, you can see those wires.
Yeah. But yeah, that's more or less my thing. But even that version of the film, the little of the allegory that was in it, I felt was very compelling and very hard hitting. And I actually was like, wow, this movie's kind of heavy. It's with what it's trying to say. So when I saw this version of the film, I was like, holy shit, okay.
It's like an angry cat.
Swatting. It's like, get the fuck away from me! Fuck off!
Like mosquitoes.
Fucking.
So here's the thing. Japan was still occupied by America for years after, right?
Yeah, we had a presence. It's funny. Well, we basically tore them down, then helped them build back up.
Well, I know that, but
Yeah.
I'm like, in terms of the movie, obviously I know they probably didn't, because of the allegory and everything, they didn't want to depend on America. But realistically, it's like, shouldn't America have been fighting Godzilla too? Or would they not have been there still? Maybe.
I'm not positive. A big part of that could be they just didn't have access to American actors, so even if they wanted to, they really couldn't put it in.
And again, it does kind of go against the whole allegory, but
I'm sure it's one of those things. If they did not stop Godzilla where they did, it's implied that yes, the rest of the world would have to have gotten involved. I think it is implied too that there is kind of political pressure on Japan from the world at large in this film, but you're not really seeing Westerners, which you could argue having, Raymond Burr in the 56 version could kind of lend itself to that. You're seeing a Western element, and so here we are, Tokyo. Once upon a time, this was history, and when we went to the Edo Museum, in Tokyo.
Yeah.
We saw pictures of Tokyo after the firebombing of World War II, and it looks like that. It literally looked, and I remember even thinking to myself when I saw those pictures and the footage they were showing, I was like, "Holy shit!" It literally looks like the aftermath of a Godzilla attack. Which in actuality, no, the Godzilla attacks looks like the aftermath of what happened. So again, we just see it as okay. Hey, it's awesome. Godzilla just wrecked Tokyo. Woohoo! 1954 in the theater, the people watching the film, seeing those shots would have been like, it would have been so kind of, I mean, I don't even know how to describe it because I can't relate to that. I've never been in a situation like that for me. What that must feel like. I mean, shots like this, like that's that girl's mother dead. It's kind of like
This always makes me think of Grave of the Fireflies, which
yeah.
is such a sad movie.
Exactly. Look at this. I mean, here's your big, cool monster movie. And it's... So when you see people saying we need to kill Godzilla, Dr. Yamane, you understand why he's fascinated by Godzilla, but at the same time, when you see this...
Yeah.
You can't really, help it. Like, you have to say, okay, it's basically kind of him or us.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where the characters are starting to come to. They realize that the price maybe isn't worth it.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, at the same time, though.
And that's what she's...
It's not like they're not trying.
Yeah, but she...
But obviously that's...
But here's her. She's going to have to break her brother's... the promise she made to her brother, because it's like... And can you blame her? Like, what choice do they have, really, at this point? Yeah. And think about for her, she's probably feeling too, like if she had said something sooner, maybe this could have been avoided. Like maybe all this death could have been prevented if they used the weapon on Godzilla sooner. So I'm sure she's probably even feeling too, like, the blood of all these people is on her hands because she kept her mouth shut. And again, these are the themes that I think make this film such a timeless classic because they really it's a film about hard choices.
Yeah.
People being put in terrible situation and forced to make a bet. And here's a callback. Now you're going to show you that scene, but show you what she saw and why it was so terrible. Basically, he just basically just creates death. You know what I mean?
Instantly, destroys all living tissue.
Yeah, it's called the oxygen destroyer. It's like micro oxygen. It's supposed to kind of eat away at it's all pseudoscience.
Yeah.
It's not real, but it was more or less to represent. It's like, okay, we created a weapon, and that weapon begat Godzilla. A weapon we created a monster. And now to destroy this monster that was created by this weapon, we have to create an even worse weapon to kill him. But what will that weapon beget? You know what I mean? Will we get something worse than Godzilla? Which in 1995, that's exactly what we got in Godzilla vs. Destroyer, where the results of this film created a creature that was even more devastating than him.
Yeah.
And it's Pandora's box. It's a vicious cycle. We make the weapon, creates the monster. We make a worse weapon, kill the monster, create a worse monster, and it's just like this cycle that
Well, and again, it's just like the discovery of the atom bomb too.
Yeah, I mean, it was the ushering in of
I honestly, that's probably what they're going for.
Well, yeah.
Besides
it's just one of those things where, again, now it's a difficult position for him as a scientist because he knows he might have something that could save us all from Godzilla, but it could turn all of Tokyo Bay into an aquatic graveyard. Exactly. So it's like, at what cost? What can we afford not to take it? Everyone in this film is just in a really, really bad spot, basically. That's what this whole film is about. It's just being in a really shitty position in life with no clear-cut answer.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the thing, too, to take in mind. You're talking about the H-bomb. The bombs that were dropped in Japan were atom bombs. H-bombs are even worse. So already since that time, we have developed more destructive versions of those weapons. So the cycle of, just escalation is already in full swing, even by this point in history. I mean, that's one of the reasons why they were testing those bombs so far out at sea, because they did it too close to land. I mean,
yeah.
It's funny. She actually reprised her role for like a cameo in Godzilla vs. Destroyer.
Did she really?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I remember
her
that.
character. It's like her niece or her granddaughter or something. Like is one of the people, like a reporter. So it was kind of cool to see her kind of come back.
Yeah.
She's very pretty too.
Mm-hmm. You say that, do you know my brother?
It's funny, in the 56 cut, there's a scene where he takes a call from Raymond Burr's character. And obviously, there was no version of that in the Japanese film with him talking. So he like holds up the phone, and the phone's like covering his face, kind of, so you don't really see that it's not the same actor talking to him. And as a kid, you don't really notice those kinds of things. But as a girl, I was like, I see what they did there. Have a seat at my table with my fish. You fucking told him? Look at that look he's giving her. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
A stink eye with my good eye.
Emiko, do you know what he's talking about? Yeah, no shit.
Yeah. Girl, you crazy. I don't know what you're talking about.
Thanks. Oh, everything, did you? Really? You don't say. Thanks for looking at him. It's like, God damn it.
He just takes off his eye patch. He laser eyes her. I've weaponized my retina.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's even saying, like, yeah, that was... And I think, his character even kind of...
Serizawa was already kind of thinking about it, maybe.
Well, I think Takarada's character here, too, is even thinking, like, well, he's trying to be respectful, but I think he resents Serizawa to some degree for putting that burden, for forcing her to keep a secret like that, because he didn't have to take her down there. He didn't have to show her that. It's not like she stumbled into the lab in the middle of, like, an experiment and she, oh, okay. No, he took her down there and he showed her that he burdened her with that truth. And put that on her shoulders. And I think he kind of, like, to a degree, like, you son of a bitch, well, how could you do that to her, Put that on her shoulders.
Especially if she does feel guilty now.
And she does, and that's the thing, so...
Well, not if, you know what I mean.
And of course, he's like, yeah, I gotta just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Fish like, yes, please destroy it. Oh, quit dropping that shit in here. And it's interesting, too, guys. Takarada got hurt here in the scuffle. Da-da-da. And in American or Western film, even, you would have seen it. It would have been a great, like, punch. Those old movies when they had that scene where one guy punches another and you hear that sound. Yep. It's interesting here, they don't make the violence the focal point of the scene. Like, in Western cinema, there would have been a brawl. Yeah. Like, throwing a guy around, some punches exchanged. Maybe not a long fight.
We don't want to break our set.
Well, yeah, there's that. But I think here too, it's more about the emotional drama, not necessarily about the action. There's a scuffle, sure, but it's not the center point of the film. It's not an action scene where two guys are gonna beat the hell out of each other. It's not that scene in They Live where it's like, what, a 20-minute fight scene in the alley.
Well, that's the thing. Again, I think it kind of goes back to Japanese culture. Like, violence isn't really the answer.
Yeah, I mean, again, something like this is almost like And they probably both, because instantly he feels bad for
Yeah.
doing that. Even though the guy wants to, do
He
something,
got caught up in the heat of the moment.
and again, even though he's fundamentally against what a guy wants him to do, he's still apologetic for having resorted to violence to kind of
Yeah.
see. Even here, he's exactly. He doesn't want to contribute to kind of like the escalation. He doesn't want to be a part of that.
Then it's on him.
No, exactly. He doesn't want that to be his legacy. He's a scientist. He wants to, save humanity. He doesn't want to destroy it, but
A rock in a hard place.
exactly. And it's kind of his legacy basically, and it's whether he wants it or not, and that's what makes him a tragic character, because it's like all he wanted to do was do good, and now he'll be remembered as the guy who created the oxygen destroyer. Yeah. And again, I like how this film celebrates the frailty of humanity. It's not putting humanity as a pedestal. Where this is our world.
Yeah.
We're gonna conquer the monster, and we're gonna rise to the challenge. Where I feel like a lot of American films were like that. Like, let's all just band together and take down whatever is bothering us.
Again, kind of like real life. It's not that easy.
Again, it's the whole Dragon Slayer mentality. Let's put on our armor and go charging into battle heroically. Here it's basically saying, humanity is just, we're doomed, basically. He's basically saying. It's like, if Godzilla doesn't kill us, we're just going to kill ourselves. It's kind of like, and again, it's a very dark message, but I would say a very kind of poignant message. And this scene shot here with like the singing and all that. Yeah. And this was actually in the U.S. version too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was moments like this survived the U.S. edit, and I remember seeing that as a kid, thinking, man, because I had seen other Godzilla films prior to this. More of the campy kind of fun. So when I saw this film,
I would say Hedorah was your first one.
Yeah, Hedorah or 1985, but I'm pretty sure I saw Hedorah right before 85. So I got like the super gritty raw Godzilla and the really just goofy like camp. Yeah. So I was locked in, man. But yeah, no. So imagine seeing Hedorah and then seeing this film. Yeah. It was like, holy shit! Like all this stuff here was like.
And one girl in the front's just like, I ain't gonna sing, and the right kind of in the middle of the white shirt.
I mean, this is like, holy crap! You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also these are the children. These are the future. This is the future of this country, this nation. This is what we're fighting for. This is what they're trying to protect. Is this?
Yeah.
Because this is the future of their country. If it falls, that they So I like how it puts a very kind of real. It makes the stakes feel very real. Again, it's not just us battling the monster just because it's cool. This movie is about more than just that. And granted, I love the Godzilla movies that are about that too. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I love Godzilla vs. Hedorah. I love all the Godzilla movies. But, obviously some of them kind of stand above the others. And 84, 84 is my favorite Godzilla movie. I will say that. Mm-hmm. But 54 is the best Godzilla movie. It is the greatest Godzilla movie ever made. And one of the finest films, I'll say, ever made, too.
Yeah.
Because it accomplishes what it set out to do. It tells the story that it wanted to tell so perfectly and so beautifully. Everything about it is just kind of like, spot on. I know Citizen Kane is kind of the go-to, analogy. Everyone, whenever people try to say, "Oh, don't be too hard in a film," not every movie is not supposed to be Citizen Kane, or "Well, you're expecting Citizen Kane." They always kind of use it as like the benchmark for like greatness. I've always said though, this film to me is right up there, and I know that maybe a lot of people might not agree with that, but I would say this is a film on the same caliber as that. And it's not just because I like kaiju films. It's I don't know. I just think this film masterfully achieves what it set out to do.
Well, and again, it's kind of the ultimate irony that it wasn't meant to be a monster movie, so to speak.
No,
But that's what it kind of became.
I can't remember if it was Ishido Honda or someone else involved with the production who said this. I'm pretty sure it was him, but I might be mistaken. So just feel free to fact check me on this. But I think he said when he kind of saw what the Godzilla films, that with the franchise, he kind of some said like he failed because he wanted a film that was going to revolutionize the world. He changed the way, maybe teach humanity a lesson and maybe steer history in a different direction. And Godzilla just kind of became, albeit a fantastic monster movie franchise, but that's kind of what it just became. And I think
I can understand him saying that in the Showa era.
Well, yeah. I mean, and granted, again, it's like I love all of Godzilla movie, but yeah, that was kind of the sentiment too, like but you can make the argument: would this film had? I mean, again, this cut of the film was released in America briefly, but didn't really make any waves. I think it was also released in limited theaters in areas in America that had a high Japanese population, like Little Tokyo, that kind of place where. Because this is a film very much for the Japanese market. It's it's for a Japanese audience. It's meant to resonate with Japanese people of this era. Whereas again, unfortunately, the American audiences at that time might have not been sophisticated enough to really kind of understand the allegory. Yeah. Certainly not from the side of the line they were sitting on. But like I said, time moves forward, and we now live in a point in history where.
Look at him and his little hat.
It's kind of interesting too, like, despite their disagreements, he still has, Serizawa's back. You know what I mean? These guys, again, they pull whatever disagreements they may have had with one another aside. They're working together.
For the greater good.
Exactly. And again, I like that. It's like, you're going to have difference of opinion, you're going to have scuffles, but at the end of the day, they're going to come together and work as a team. That's when I always remember these shots in the King of the Monsters version. They would always cut the shots of Rimmenberg just on the ship.
Yeah.
Just shot looking him.
By himself?
No, he was there, but they had like other like actors they put on next to him,
So they made it blended in.
There's the Oxygen Destroyer. That prop still exists, if I'm not mistaken.
Poor Serizawa.
Yeah. Again, he probably thought this would be like his Nobel Prize right here, and then it's just, nope, you're going to use it as a weapon.
He looks so badass with his hair like back like that in his eye patch.
Like a freaking bandana on, yeah. And for it's interesting too how again it's all radio for a lot of people back then. That's how they'd be getting the news, play by play. Now they'd be like, nowadays everyone have like their cell phones out and they'd be filming this would be on YouTube. They'd be live streaming this on YouTube or whatever. But
I think it's funny too because like it's not like this is the ending of the movie, but it's not like huge and over the top action scene like most movies would be.
Yeah.
It kind of it is what it is.
And then granted, other Godzilla films later on would have the big, huge...
Yeah.
The sequel to this film in particular has a pretty big action extravaganza. Which, that film was light on allegory, heavy on action. So if you don't think this movie has got
like
enough...
flip-flop.
Yeah, if you don't think this movie has enough action, just stick around for the next one, folks. There's a bevy of it.
And that's the thing, like, I forgot, like, they don't know what the Oxygen Destroyer actually is gonna do, right?
They don't know, I don't think they really know the full, I mean, they have an idea, but it's one of those...
Like how he's just chilling on a rock, like, oh, hey guys, want some tea? I don't know why I give him that voice. That's just my Godzilla voice, apparently.
It's a weird Godzilla voice. How's he gonna get him tea underwater? I, I really don't think you thought this character through, my dear. So it's kind of interesting too how they kind of show Godzilla in this kind of underwater world, and you can kind of see him in his environment, and it's in moments like this where to me he almost ceases to be a monster and kind of goes back to being an animal. You know, when you kind of see him, you know.
It's so funny seeing those little diving suits.
Yeah. How scary would that be, though? Like
that would be terrifying.
And seeing something as big as Godzilla down there. I mean,
and it's funny because obviously scenes like this aren't actually shot underwater.
No.
But the other ones definitely are.
I love that shot. It's kind of him hazy in the water.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. I love the music here, too.
I was just going to say that.
Again, there's no big dialogue happening right now. Nothing's blowing up. You know, it's a very just kind of somber scene. Just two guys in the water. Godzilla himself isn't even like doing a lot. He's just kind of there, you know, just checking stuff out.
Like, oh, hey. Gosh, those suits are so, like, bulky.
Yeah. It's just interesting to do Godzilla's design. You know, the overall silhouette of it hasn't changed much at all over the years. I mean, different iterations, but it has kind of remained for the most part as it was all these years. You know, like he's kind of almost like again. It's been updated to be sure, but the general silhouette has kind of remained timeless. Yep, and Serizawa is remaining behind.
Yeah,
because he even said that even if you burn all my notes, it's all still in my head. Yep. So, kind of makes me think a little bit of Terminator 2, when after they throw away the chip, the arm, they destroy T-1000, the T-800 is still like, well, there's still one chip left, and he has to destroy himself, because he's like, as long as I exist, you know, that technology exists too. Serizawa saying the same thing, as long as I'm alive, you know, the knowledge exists. The knowledge needs to be erased, and the only way to do that is to destroy all traces of it, and that means, you know, the guy who thought of it. So it's, and characters who, you know, and self-sacrifice is a reoccurring theme in Japanese, you know, storytelling. You know, it's kind of the highest honor a character can have, sacrificing their own life for a greater good. So this would have been, for them, the big heroic action sequence for their character, is him sacrificing his life so that others could live. Essentially, he's kind of trying to safeguard the future.
Well, and that's the thing. It's not... The Oxygen Destroyer, obviously, it's going to kill everything in Tokyo Bay. Not just...
Yeah, I mean, this whole area here is going to be basically just...
Like all the fish, everything that lives in the water there.
Cutting the line. Great model effect work in this movie too. Good use of miniatures. Kind of the last gasp.
It's kind of an anguished last cry.
I was wondering, how close to the ship is he supposed to be right here? And it's funny you see here the bones disappear, but in the Millennium era when it was they did Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, the Mechagodzilla in that film was built
From
around the bones of this original one. They actually showed you like the skeleton they had, and it became possessed by the ghost of like this Godzilla. But it's interesting. They said the bones were intact, yet here you see them dissolve away. So I was wondering, like, where the hell those bones come from? Those bones were gone. Yep. So this is your big climactic ending. You know, it ends on a very dour note. You know what I mean? And I mean, it was pretty kind of sad a little bit at the end of the American Cup, but they still kind of put like, yeah, well, at least we conquered, you know, the monster. But this film is very much like, you know, we beat a monster, but at what cost? Look what it cost us. You know what I mean? Again, it doesn't end on like a happy note where everyone's high-fiving and cracking open a beer. You know,
Nobody won.
She was the last of its species, so I think it is implied that, yeah, there was obviously more than one Godzilla, you know, and obviously there is more than one Godzilla because there's a sequel to this movie.
Yeah.
Yep. Basically saying, you know, it's like if we continue on the way we are, we're just going to unleash the more monsters upon ourselves, you know what I mean? That's... And there we have it. Well, there you go, folks. That is the original 1954 Japanese cut of Gojira, a.k.a. Godzilla. So, just some final thoughts. You know, now having seen it for the first time in a while, I guess. I know it's been a minute. What'd you think? Like...
I mean, again, I think after watching Shin Gojira, it kind of it is nice to go back and watch this and see kind of the similarities, you know, especially because Shin Gojira is like a new reboot, basically.
Yeah, kind of basically trying to do...
It's really nice to see. They kept a lot of the original concepts. Would that be the right term?
I guess, yeah, kind of a lot of the allegories, but kind of updating them for a
make
modern...
it more relevant for us,
You know, this film was very kind of cathartic about, like, you know, Japan, post-war Japan dealing with... basically living in an era now where we basically have created monsters of war, you know, like, you know, the bombs and all that. These are essentially just monsters that are really out of our control. And whereas Shin was more about, like, you know, modern day post-war Japan and their ability to protect themselves. And we'll talk about that when we get to Shin, which, rest assured, we're going to be going...
a ways to go before we get there.
Well, but we'll be getting there, rest assured. But yeah, so it's I don't know. This film is very much a time capsule. It's a great It's a great example of, you know, filmmaking of that era in Japan.
It's just so funny too. After watching again, I haven't seen this one in a while now, you know, and going back to the beginning, before, you know, he became
a superhero.
Yeah, before he really became Godzilla, if you know what I mean. Like,
yeah.
It's just really interesting because, again, like, he's the main character, but he's not. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
No, it does. Well, it's just funny now when you think, okay, there's other monsters attacking. You know, Godzilla's got to show up and save the day. If all you had was this film and you say, okay, now this is going to be the monster that's going to save us all, people would be like, what?
What does that even mean?
What is that? How is that hell? That's like saying, hey, you know, Hannibal Lecter is going to come to your PTA
He's the new
meeting.
Superhero.
Yeah, he's going to come to your parent-teacher conference. Mom and Dad can't make it, so yeah, Hannibal Lecter is going to come do it for you. You'd be like, what? No, you need at least 30 movies in between to kind of like tone him down a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, and it shows you the evolution of this character, what he's become. And now, interestingly enough, I think he has kind of become something of a little bit of both. I mean, minus Shin, you know.
They kind of found that nice in between.
Yeah, I mean, he's bad news to us, but he tends to be the lesser of 2 or 3 or 4 evils in movies.
Chaotic neutral in a way.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that he was that in this film because he wasn't outright like evil. He wasn't like, I'm going to destroy humanity because I hate it. But he was what he was was not something that was, simpatico, so to speak, with us. Like, we really can't survive in a world with Godzilla, even though we've done it for like 60 years now in the
I
movies.
know.
But that initially, that was kind of the thing. It was like, it's either going to be a world of monsters or us. And, but to beat him, what do we kind of, it's kind of like you have to kind of sell your soul a little bit. And that's kind of what it was. And, so yeah, it's a film that has a lot to say, and I think did a very good job of saying it. So, yep, that's gonna, I guess, do it for us on this one. And thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the movie. If this was your first time seeing the movie, I hope you guys can go back now and watch it without us yammering over it. If you are like us and have seen this movie before, I hope you enjoyed our commentary. And hope you keep tuning in for more. We'll be doing Godzilla Rage again on the next one. Very, very different film, I must say. So it's going to be kind of interesting going from that one, or from this one to that one, tonally speaking. But yeah, we'll talk about that one on the next one. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Kaiju Commentary. Peace!